Alhamdulillahi wa kafa wa salamun ala ibadihi alladhina istafa. Amma ba'd. عن معاذ الجهني قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من قرأ القرآن وعمل بما فيه ألبس والداه تاجا يوم القيامة ضوءه أحسن من ضوء الشمس في بيوت الدنيا لو كانت فيكم فما ظنكم بالذي عمل بهذا. حضرت معاذ الجہنی رضی اللہ عنہ سے روایت ہے کہ رسول اللہ صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم نے ارشاد فرمایا جس نے قرآن پڑھا اور اس میں جو کچھ ہے اس پر عمل کیا قیامت کے دن اس کے ماں باپ کو ایسا تاج پہنایا جائے گا جس کی روشنی سورج کی روشنی سے بھی زیادہ حسین ہوگی جبکہ وہ روشنی دنیا کے گھروں میں ہو اور سورج آسمان سے ہمارے پاس ہی اتر آئے۔ اس کے بعد رسول اللہ صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم نے ارشاد فرمایا پھر تمہارا کیا خیال ہے اس شخص کے بارے میں جس نے اس پر عمل کیا ہو، یعنی جس نے خود یہ عمل کیا ہو، یعنی جس نے خود قرآن شریف پر پڑھ کے عمل کیا ہو۔ Narrated by Hazrat Muaz al-Juhani, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that whoever recites the Quran and acts upon it, on the day of judgment his parents, his mother and father, will be given such an illuminated crown, a crown such of noor, that the light of that, the illumination of that will be more bright and more beautiful than the light of the sun if the sun was in our houses. So not in the sky but in our houses, very close, very near, so very bright. And then the Prophet ﷺ said, what do you think about that person who himself did this, which means that he read the Quran and acted upon it. So therein is the virtue of people who have a relationship with the Quran, they recite the Quran and they act upon the Quran. And we have been talking about the rights of Quran for the past 2 or 3 majalis. The next hadith also talks about this, that reading the Quran and acting upon it has a lot of virtue, a lot of benefit on the day of judgment. This hadith says, Man qara al-Quran wa amila bima fi. So the question arises that we recite the Quran and we act upon it. Now who is able to act upon the whole Quran? And this is a very big question that we either misunderstand the answer of or totally avoid it. We don't want to deal with it, thinking that it's too big and it's unachievable. But all of that is based on ignorance, not knowing, not having the correct knowledge. Otherwise, whatever Allah commands, Allah is Arhamur Rahimin, Allah is the most merciful of all those who can be merciful. So Allah, when He gives a command, He only gives that command which is within our reach. Therefore, when Allah is asking us to act upon the Quran, then Allah has definitely kept it within our reach to act upon this extensive book which is full of knowledge and full of ma'arif. In fact, we read 2 or 3 majalis ago that the Prophet ﷺ said that if you keep on floating in the Quran, if you keep on floating in the ma'arif of the Quran, the ma'arif, the meanings of the Quran will never end. And at the other end, we are being asked to act upon the Quran. So how is that possible? And many years ago, I read a Jummah here somewhere in Madison, and the Imam was a very beautiful, very eloquent speaker, and he said that Quran is a workbook. Quran is a workbook. We deal with it like a textbook. That we just keep it like a book that we have to understand and we have to read and we have to, understand theory from it. Quran is a workbook. You read it and you act upon it. Such a beautiful thing to say. But if you think about it, you pick up the Quran and you want to act upon it, how will you do it? Why I pick up the Quran and I say, I start the first surah, Alif Lam Mim. The first surah, Surah Fatiha. But may Allah protect us in this day and age. There's people who say that Fatiha is something else, Quran is something else. That's why we are not using the example of Surah Fatiha. But if you start with Surah Baqarah, for example, and say Alif Lam Mim, so you see those letters, Alif Lam Mim, and how would you even recite those? How would you even recite those? On this Wednesday or Tuesday, there was a child who started Surah Baqarah with me, and he, based on the general rules of recitation, he recited it Alam Ma, and that's the wrong way of reciting it. But how do we know that it's supposed to be recited Alif Lam Mim? These three will be recited separately. There's simply no way of knowing except that we look towards how the Prophet ﷺ recited it. Back in the day, in United India, when there was these publishing and these fonts and digital fonts were not very prevalent, very common, people used to write Quran with hand. And if you have got the experience of it, they used to write it with cut pens. There's pens which have their tips have been cut, slanted, cut a little. So it writes very beautifully. And those people who are experts of it, they write very beautifully with it. So there's chapters of the Quran, there's surahs of the Quran that start with Alif Lam Ra. Alif Lam Ra. And on the Lam there is a Madda. So they make a big sign like this, which tells you that you have to stretch the Lam. So it goes like Alif Lam Ra. And when you make Ra with a cut pen, the way to make Ra is that you just slightly turn the pen and bring it down. And it makes the head of the Ra. And Waw is also made very similarly, very close. Waw's head is just a little bit bigger, and Ra has just a little tinier head. So that person, Thani Rahmatullahi has written that my brother was traveling with a Quran handwritten and in the train, and somebody who was of these kind of thoughts that we will read the Quran ourselves and we'll act upon the Quran ourselves, he said, show me what you have. He said, it's a Quran handwritten. He said, let me read it. Like, fine, read it. And he opened it and he said, read Alu. You understand what I'm saying? The people who understand Urdu will understand that if you take the Lam and the stretch of it, you apply, you don't know. If you apply it on Alif and you take the Ra to be Waw, you will read it Alu, which means potato. Instead of Alif Lam Ra, he read Alu, which is potato. And then he started fighting with the Maulana that why cannot it be Alu? It just looks like Alu. Why cannot it be potato or Alu? Why cannot I recite it Alu? So this is where we will go if we approach the Quran in such a way that we say, this is the book of Allah, it has been given to me, I will read it and I will understand it, I will act upon it. We cannot even recite Alif Lam Mim without depending upon the practice of the Prophet ﷺ, which is the Sunnah. So therefore the first misconception that we should erase from our minds is that we can act upon the Quran, we can read the Quran and act upon it ourselves without depending on the Sunnah or the Hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. Now, fine, the Quran is a workbook, it's not a textbook. I am going to read it and I am going to act upon it. Now I understand that I have to know the Hadith. So where should I start with Hadith then? So then I'll have to go to, let's take the simplest approach, that I will take an explanation of the Quran which is based on the Hadith. Fine, I agree, I need Hadith. I'll take the explanation of a Quran which is based on Hadith and I will then start acting upon it. So, and this is just one example, very simple example that I am giving, that you complete the ayah Alif Lam Mim Zalikal Kitabu La Rayba Fihi Hudan Lil Muttaqin. It is a guidance, Allah is saying it is guidance for Muttaqin. Now who is a Muttaqi? The Quran does not explain it. The Quran talks about taqwa a lot of times. The Quran says the virtues of Muttaqi people, but who are those Muttaqi people? What is taqwa in reality? You have to go to the Hadith again. The Prophet ﷺ explains and his Sahaba explain and his Sahaba show that this is taqwa. So then again we cannot understand the Quran without understanding the Hadith and the life of Sahaba, looking at the life of Sahaba. So then for me, I have to understand hadith first, and that's an extensive branch of deen, of knowledge. So I have to first understand hadith, I have to understand the life of the Sahaba, I have to understand and have it in my mind the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then I'll be able to understand the Quran. And I say, fine, I agree up to this point. This is the way. Already we understand that this has become impractical. In your lifetime of 50, 60, 70 years, in which you also have to work, in which you also have to sleep, this is simply not possible. But then you move on and you read the ayah where it is said that يُؤْمِنُونَ بِهِ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِمَا أُنزِلَ إِلَيْكَ وَمَا أُنزِلَ مِنْ قَبْلِكَ وَبِالْآخِرَةِ هُمْ يُوقِنُونَ. And then it says that these are the people who establish salah and وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ. Whatever we've given them. So all of these commands, even if you knew the ahadith, you will not be able to corroborate them in one place and find out that this is what Allah wants from me. For example, when you talk about مِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ, what Allah has given them, they spend from it. The ulama agree that this is about zakat, the first charity. And the truth of the matter is that charity, this zakat, the rulings of zakat, there is many hadiths about it. And even the ulama sometimes, the general ulama, they are confused about the rulings of spending. So they have to also sit together in groups and discuss a masala. Sometimes a question is posed to them. They have to sit together, multiple ulama sit together and find out the answer to the situation. And if you think, if you ask the ulama, the most answers to the spending part is found. So number one, you know that only from the Quran and Hadith, even a general alim cannot understand and act upon the Quran. If you only restrict yourself to the books of Hadith and the Quran, one is not able to act upon the Quran fully. You have to go to the ulama of fiqh. What is fiqh? Fiqh is where ulama, not one or two, but groups of ulama have sat together, and with their extensive knowledge, they have compiled the rulings of practical daily life based on Quran and Hadith, so that a common person does not have to worry about reading and learning the whole extensive branch of science, and they can read the ayat of Quran and the masail that are driven from it, the applications, practical life, daily life applications that are driven from the ayat. They are written right there and then, therein, driven and extracted from the whole huge branch of ahadith. So this is called fiqh. So without fiqh, we cannot understand Quran. And in reality, when we are talking about following the Quran, I hope it makes sense to us now that it is in reality following the fiqh. Because the rulings of Quran explained by the hadith and the life of Sahaba as they apply to our daily life is the fiqh. So basically, when the Prophet ﷺ is saying that they act upon the Quran, the practical meaning of this is that they follow the fiqh, that they follow the ulama who have extracted rulings of practical daily life based on the Quran and Hadith. And among the fiqh, there was just something that I wanted to mention, that مِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ, the most extensive light that has been thrown among the four famous fuqaha over the rules of spending, so extensive, in such great depth, that even the other systems of fiqh are dependent on him, is Imam Azam Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi alayhi. So even the countries that follow it today, the fiqh of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal rahmatullahi alayhi, for example, or Imam Shafi rahmatullahi alayhi, for example, these are the great fuqaha that the ummah collectively has been in agreement of following for the past 1400 years. Even they, in the matters of spending, they are dependent on the fiqh of Imam Azam Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi alayhi. So anyway, jokingly, some of our mashayikh used to say that without Imam Azam Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi alayhi, you cannot go past وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ. You cannot even go past this ayah of the Quran without Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi alayhi, because about spending there is questions that have not been answered by other ulama. They have been answered like the way they have been answered in the fiqh of Imam Azam Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi alayhi. So anyway, so when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that whoever recites the Quran, we have to recite the Quran like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam recited, and it comes through the Sahaba. Similarly, when the Prophet ﷺ says that they act upon the Quran, then we have to understand that although however beautiful it might seem that we pick up the Quran and we act upon it, it's not possible. It's simply not possible without depending. In fact, understanding that for us, people who have come from India, Pakistan and Bangladesh, it is impossible to even understand the meaning of one word of the Quran without following someone. Because if you are reading a translation, then that translator is your leader and you are the follower. So without following somebody, it's just simply not possible. Or the other option is leave everything right from the age of 9 or 10 years old, dedicate your life to the science of the Quran and Hadith, and by the time you are about to die, you will probably maybe have that kind of knowledge where you can understand the Quran without the dependent on someone else, but that whole knowledge that you have got through means in which you have depended. And if that happens, and that has happened, for example, there is great mashayikh, very knowledgeable people in this day and age as well, but when they reach that level, they say that we will follow Imam Azam Hanifa rahmatullahi alayhi. All our knowledge teaches us even more that we will follow one of those fuqaha. There is certain ulama in India and Pakistan that we have read about, that their students invited them, encouraged them that you can develop your own fiqh, you can develop your own understanding of the Quran and Hadith and set up rules and principles. They said, with all the knowledge that we have, we further are convinced that we should follow one of the fuqaha, mujtahideen. So anyway, so when it is said that man qara al-Quran wa amila bima fih, it is not possible. Basically the meaning is learn the recitation of the Quran and in the matters of daily life follow the teachings of fiqh, follow the teachings of what we have been told by the ulama, who are very sincere people. And now if you start doubting the sincerity of everybody, basically then there is no end to this. Number one, the Prophet ﷺ has said that the best of times is mine, and then the people who come after, and then the people who come after. So as the world is progressing, as the time is increasing, as the date is progressing, the world is becoming full of less muttaqi people, by the words of the Prophet ﷺ. So the people who compiled fiqh back in the day, which is a time right after the Prophet ﷺ, because these fuqaha, the famous ones, they are known to have, Imam Azam, for example, is known to have met Sahaba. So he's a tabi'i. So that time, the taqwa at that time and the taqwa of this time by default, as the Prophet ﷺ has already announced, it will constantly decrease. And we are reading in the first ayah of the Quran that Quran is hidayat for muttaqeen. So whoever is more in taqwa, they will arrive at the right conclusions rather than those who have Google or those who have internet. Are today's people who are by definition less in taqwa because of the time that has passed since the Prophet ﷺ. So we have to trust their taqwa. The problem is that our nafs, our desire, which does not want to submit to anyone, it teaches us many lessons and teaches us that do not trust these people. And the example is that a person is going in a jungle and he sees, he looks down in a lake, or he sees some water and he sees that it's a very ugly person. He says he says to that reflection that he's seeing, he says, you are so ugly, that is the reason why somebody has left you in the forest. In reality, they are looking at their own self. Or another example that's written is that these kind of examples are making much more sense to me these days, that a mother is cleaned the diaper of their child and they got some on their hand as well. So when they came out, they looked at the moon and they said, oh, the moon is so stinky tonight. In reality, the stench is in your own self. But you are looking at somebody who's beyond. For 1400 years, the ummah has agreed that these fuqaha, one of them is to be followed. And the Prophet ﷺ has said that my ummah will never gather on something that is wrong. If the whole of ummah agrees on something, then that is the truth. And the whole of ummah for more than 1,000 years has agreed on following one of these fuqaha. These things that we will not follow this, we'll learn the Quran ourselves, we'll teach the Quran ourselves, we'll learn the meaning, we'll use this, we'll use that, here, there. These concepts are of the past 200 years maximum. The fuqaha, the ummah has been a consensus that the ummah has been following one of these fuqaha. So therefore, if somebody is pointing their finger towards them and saying that they are na'uzu billah full of faults, that finger is full of fault. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us an understanding. So the reward of such a person who learns how to recite the Quran and recites the Quran, makes it part of their life and acts upon it, the meaning of which I explained in detail. The Prophet ﷺ is saying that their parents will be given a crown of illumination, of light. And that is an honor that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving, because we generally see today as well that whoever has a connection with the Quran, it is because of their parents. We see that in our early life, it is our parents who sent us to a madrasa or a place where we learned the Quran. They had that concern because their parents had concern for them when they were young, and then this is how this keeps on going. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep it alive in this ummah, that parents are worried about the teaching and learning of Quran for their children, and that's how the system keeps on going. Allah is also going to honor the parents, because you think about it, when you have a child, there is many things that are on your mind, and as the society is becoming more and more demanding, the child has to succeed in this world, the child has to fight at many fronts, and still you also give importance to their deeni learning, their learning of deen, religion. That speaks volumes about the status, the understanding, the intellect of the parents. And only the intellect, the parents who have that kind of intellect, they choose to make sure that their children also get proper knowledge of the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to reward those parents. And then the Prophet ﷺ is saying that what do you think about that person who is himself that person, who is reading the Quran and acting upon it. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make all of us among those people. Ameen. عن أبي أمامة قال سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول اقرأوا القرآن فإنه يأتي يوم القيامة شفيعا لأصحابه. اقرأوا الزهراوين البقرة وسورة آل عمران فإنهما تأتيان يوم القيامة كأنهما غمامتان أو غيايتان أو فرقان من طير صواف تحاجان عن أصحابهما. اقرأوا سورة البقرة فإن أخذها بركة وتركها حسرة ولا يستطيعها البطلة. हज़रत अबी उमामा अल-बाहिली रज़ियल्लाहु अन्हु रिवायत फरमाते हैं कि मैंने रसूलुल्लाह सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम से सुना, आप सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम इरशाद फरमाते थे कि कुरान पढ़ा करो, वो क़यामत के दिन अपने पढ़ने वालों का शफ़ी बनकर आएगा, यानी उनके शफ़ी का मतलब ये होता है कि उनके बिहाफ़ पे अल्लाह ताला से बात करेगा, उनके बिहाफ़ पे इंटरसीड करेगा, उनकी मग़फ़िरत करवाएगा। ख़ासकर ज़हरावीन, ज़हरा कहते हैं चमकदार को, ज़हरावीन दो चमकदार सूरतें, सूरह बक़रा और सूरह आल इमरान, कि वो क़यामत के दिन अपने पढ़ने वालों को अपने साए में लेकर इस तरह आएंगी जैसे बादल के दो टुकड़े हों या दो साइबान हो, शेल्टर हों, या सफ़ बांधे परिंदों के पर हों, यानी गोया परिंदे जो हैं वो अपने लाइन बनाकर अपने पर उनके ऊपर फैलाए हुए हों। ये दोनों सूरतें क़यामत में अपने पढ़ने वालों की तरफ से मुदाफ़ियत करेंगी। आप सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम ने फरमाया, पढ़ा करो सूरह बक़रा, क्योंकि इसको हासिल करना बड़ी बरकत वाली बात है और इसको छोड़ना बड़ी हसरत और नदामत की बात है, और अहले बतालत इसकी ताकत नहीं रखते। Narrated by Abi Umama al-Bahili radiyallahu anhu, he says that I heard the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he used to say that recite the Quran, because the Quran will come on the day of judgment as an intercessor, somebody who's going to talk to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on behalf of the one who read the Quran and acted upon it on the day of judgment, and ask Allah, persuade Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give freedom from hellfire to that person. Especially Zahrawain. Zahra means shiny. Zahrawain, two shiny surahs of the Quran, which are Surah Baqarah and Surah Ali Imran. Now if you think about it, these are also the longest surahs of the Quran, and generally we do not make, when we recite the Quran, of course we recite from the back, which is okay, which is fine, because the smaller surahs are easier to memorize. But Surah Baqarah and Surah Ali Imran also have a lot of virtue, so we should make sure that we do not ignore these surahs. On the day of judgment, these two surahs will come, taking the people who used to read these surahs under their shelter, as if they are two pieces of cloud or two shelters, or the wings of two birds that are aligned with each other. So basically covering. And the need for shelter on the day of judgment is because it will be a very hot day. The day of judgment will be a very hot day. We learn from several hadiths, in fact the Quran as well, that it will be a very hot day. People will be drowning in their sweat. May Allah protect us from the horrors of that day. It will be a very hot day. So on that day, the Prophet ﷺ has also told us that there will be no shelter. There will be no shelter. People will be looking for shelter. And such people who are such honorable people, who had Surah Baqarah and Surah Al Imran in their life, that they used to recite those and act upon those, Allah will send these surahs, and these surahs will provide a shelter for these people and intercede on this. Both these surahs will, on the day of judgment, talk to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala about their people. And the Prophet ﷺ particularly said about Surah Baqarah that recited, because to achieve Surah Baqarah is a thing of great blessing, and to leave Surah Baqarah is a thing of great deprivation. And the people on the wrong do not have the capacity of Surah Baqarah. The evil people, the people of Batil, they do not have the capacity to fight with Surah Baqarah or to withstand Surah Baqarah. And generally the Muhaddiseen have explained that this means that all sorts of evil, starting with the shaitan, who's the biggest evil. The Prophet ﷺ will read in one hadith about Surah Baqarah, in fact we'll just read it now, that the Prophet ﷺ has said that this is that surah, that if it is read in the house, then shaitan cannot even enter that house. عن أبي هريرة أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال لا تجعلوا بيوتكم مقابر وإن البيت الذي تقرأ البقرة فيه لا يدخله الشيطان. حضرت ابو ہریرہ رضی اللہ عنہ سے روایت ہے کہ رسول اللہ صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم نے فرمایا کہ اپنے گھروں کو مقبرے نہ بناؤ، یعنی جس طرح کے قبرستان میں مردے ذکر و تلاوت نہیں کر سکتے، اس کی وجہ سے قبرستان کی فضا ذکر و تلاوت کے انوار و آثار سے خالی رہتی ہے، اس طرح تم اپنے گھروں کو بھی قبرستان نہ بنا لو، بلکہ گھروں کو ذکر و تلاوت سے معمور رکھا کرو. انشاءاللہ اس کی ہم تشریح پڑھیں گے بعد میں. اور جس گھر میں سورہ بقرہ پڑھ لی جائے اس گھر میں شیطان نہیں آتا. Prophet صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم has said that in that house in which Surah Baqarah has been recited, in that house shaitan cannot enter. So other muhaddiseen have went with the meaning that magic and dark arts and all those things, the reader of Surah Baqarah is saved from those things. I have also read a narration that if somebody is not able to read whole Surah Baqarah because it takes a long time, at least the first part, the part where the Ayatul Kursi is, that part, and the last part, if somebody recites those three parts of the Surah Baqarah, it takes less than 5 minutes, from Alif Lam Mim up to Muflihun, and then the Ayatul Kursi, and the last 3 ayat or 2 ayat, then also that protection is given, that house is saved from magic and magicians and shaitan and stuff. عن النواس بن سمعان قال سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم سمعت النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول يؤتى بالقرآن يوم القيامة وأهله الذين كانوا يعملون به تقدمه سورة البقرة وآل عمران कअन्नहुमा गमामतान औ ज़ुल्लतान सौदावान बैनहुमा शरीक़ुन औ कअन्नहुमा फ़िरक़ानि मिन तैरिन सवाफ़िन तुहाज्जानि अन साहिबिहिमा। हज़रत नवास इब्न समआन रज़ियल्लाहु अन्हु से रिवायत है कि मैंने रसूलुल्लाह सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम से सुना, आप सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम इरशाद फरमाते थे कि क़यामत के दिन कुरान को और कुरान वालों को लाया जाएगा, और कुरान वाले वो हैं जो उस पर अमल करते हैं। और सूरह बकरा और आल इमरान जो कुरान की सबसे पहली सूरतें हैं वो पेश होंगी। महसूस होगा कि गोया वो बादल के दो टुकड़े हैं, या सियाह रंग के दो साहिबान हैं जिनमें नूर की चमक है, या सफ़ बांधे परों के दो परे हैं, और वो मुदाफ़अत और वकालत करेंगी अपने से ताल्लुक़ रखने वालों की। Narrated by Nawas ibn Sam'an radiallahu anhu that he heard the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to say that on the day of judgment, Quran and the people of Quran will be brought, and the people of Quran are those who acted upon it. And Surah Baqarah and Surah Al Imran will come first. They will be ahead of everything else, and they would say, they would come as if they are the two pieces of cloud or two dark shelters in which there is a shine of noor, or the wings of birds that have been lined up, that have lined up, and they would intercede and they would persuade Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in favor of the people of these surahs, the people who had a relationship with these surahs. And in the explanation there is also written that Surah Baqarah is special because a lot of the rulings of deen, they are mentioned in Surah Baqarah. All the aqaid and rulings of deen, a lot of them, they are mentioned in Surah Baqarah in very detail. So therefore acting upon Surah Baqarah literally basically means acting upon the whole Quran, acting upon the whole deen. عن أبي هريرة أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال لكل شيء سنام وسنام القرآن سورة البقرة وفيها آية هي سيدة آي القرآن آية الكرسي. हज़रत अबू हुरैरा रज़ियल्लाहु अन्हु से रिवायत है कि रसूलुल्लाह सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम ने इरशाद फरमाया कि हर चीज़ की कोई चोटी होती है, यानी जो सबसे ऊपर और ऊंची हो, और कुरान की चोटी सूरह बकरा है, और उसमें एक आयत तमाम आयत कुरानी की गोया सरदार है, और वो है आयतुल कुर्सी. Narrated by Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that everything has a top or a summit, and the summit of the Quran is Surah Baqarah, and there is one ayah in it which is the leader of all the ayat of the Quran, and that ayat is Ayatul Kursi. So Ayatul Kursi is the third ayah of the third juz of the Quran. It starts with Allahu la ilaha illahu, famous ayah. Inshallah we'll talk in detail about the meaning of that ayah inshallah next time. But this hadith, as far as this hadith goes, this hadith mentions that the explanation says that it is basically, most likely it has been said because it has a very detailed account of the aqaid, the beliefs of Islam and the teachings of Islam, the practical applications of the daily life. They are found in Surah Baqarah. So therefore it is basically the meanings, the summary of the practical commands of the Quran. Allahumma lakal hamdu wa lakal shukr. Inshallah we'll make dua and then we'll proceed towards dinner. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. اللهم لا مانع لما أعطيت ولا معطي لما منعت ولا ينفع ذا الجد منك الجد. رب اغفر وارحم وأنت خير الراحمين. Ya Allah, please forgive our major and minor sins. Ya Allah, please make us your accepted slaves. Ya Allah, grant us the right understanding of the Quran. Ya Allah, grant us the right understanding of your deen. And Ya Allah, grant us the right action upon the Quran and the right action upon your whole deen. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Ya Allah, make us truly the people of the Quran who are very dear and very close to you and very special ones to you. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Ya Allah, Ya Allah, what you want from us and how you want from us in relation to the rights of the Quran. Ya Allah, make it easy for us, and Ya Allah, you make it, Ya Allah, Ya Allah, you make us the ones who actually do it and fulfill the rights of the Quran. Ameen Ya Rabbil Alameen. Ya Allah, grant us a immense love for the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and his ways and his actions and his lifestyle. And Ya Allah, grant us love and understanding of the station of the Sahaba, the companions of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And Ya Allah, do not deprive us, Ya Allah, because of our nafsani desires, our desires of the evil desires of the self, do not deprive us from the true knowledge of Deen. Ameen Ya Rabbil Alameen. And Ya Allah, do not deprive us from the true understanding of Deen, Ya Allah. And Ya Allah, do not make our hawa our ilah. Ya Allah, do not make our desire our God. Ya Allah, Ya Allah, make us those who submit and Ya Allah, suppress our desires in face of your command, Ya Allah. Ya Allah, rather than suppressing your command and applying, Ya Allah, illegal and Ya Allah, untrue meanings to your Quran based on what we desire. Ya Allah, Ya Allah, protect us from being those people who are led astray because of the Quran, Ya Allah. Ya Allah, grant us taqwa. Ya Allah, grant us taqwa. Ya Allah, grant us the ones, Ya Allah, make us the ones, Ya Allah, who are, Ya Allah, worried about making you happy, Ya Allah, rather than making our own nafs happy, Ya Allah. Ya Allah, make us, Ya Allah, those, Ya Allah, who are concerned about your happiness, and Ya Allah, who are concerned about the hereafter more than anything else. Ameen Ya Rabbil Alameen. Ya Allah, whatever we could ask, please grant us that. Whatever we did not ask and should have asked, Ya Allah, please grant us that as well. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. Whoever is sitting here, whoever wanted to come and could not come, Ya Allah, whatever desires, whatever wishes they have, Ya Allah, Ya Allah, you fulfill them in the best of manner. And Ya Allah, Ya Allah, protect us from evil desires. And Ya Allah, Ya Allah, whatever we have, Ya Allah, that is within us, Ya Allah, you are fully aware of it. Ya Allah, Ya Allah, you have, Ya Allah, created halal, permissible opportunities of fulfilling our desire. Ya Allah, turn our desire in the direction of halal. Ameen Ya Rabbil Alameen. Ya Allah, and make haram and forbidden things naturally unpleasant to us and disagreeable to us. Ameen Ya Rabbil Alameen. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. اللهم إنا نسألك من خير ما سألك منه عبدك ونبيك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم ونعوذ بك من شر ما استعاذ منه عبدك ونبيك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. أنت المستعان وعليك البلاغ ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. وصلى الله تعالى على خير خلقه سيدنا مولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. آمين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.